Roger, we're live.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
I thought we were going to
Time for Southern Porches again.
And I want to make sure that we are live once again, and we want to be sure that we give everyone an opportunity to check in. And yep, we are live.
There we go. Yeah, you know, the thing about Southern Porches is we want to encourage you to come on the porch with us, to sit down and express whatever issues are bugging you. Wherever you're stuck, give us a chance to get in on it. And Rick and I will do the best we can to help you in any way we can. That's what this show's about. Just like old Southern Porches. You know, people come together, they talk, they kind of run through things, and they leave, hopefully with a different perspective, a different way of looking at things. And that's what we want this show to be about. A way to help you, the viewer, get unstuck, to get on the porch with us and to let us know what you're thinking about.
And that's just it, Roger. We're, if anything else, just an empathetic ear. If you remember the days of the old Southern Porches, you would just go there and, as we said in the last session, that just sit and talk, kind of figure life out. And life has gotten complicated, hasn't it?
Ooh-wee, yeah. And, you know, the thing I heard one day was they don't seem to be building houses with porches anymore. And I thought, boy, that says a lot. Because I can remember back in the day where, you know, every house had a big porch. And there was a lot of chairs on the porch. And there was that idea that I can remember when I lived in New Orleans, when you walked down the street, people you didn't even know would yell from their porch and say, hey, come on up and have some iced tea with us and sit out with things and see how things are going with you. And that's how you built a neighborhood.
And, you know, that's going to be a good segue into what we're going to talk a little bit about today regarding work-life balance. And where I'm saying that is, as I understand it, porches started going away when air conditioning was introduced.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, of course, the porches were a place in the evening you cool off. Andy and Opie and Aunt Bee and Barney would sit out there and, you know, in the cool of the night, Andy would be playing the guitar, the family would be together.
Right.
Life was easy. And I think a lot of us sometimes look back wondering whatever happened to that Mayberry life. But when the introduction of air conditioning came in, it now became just the opposite. We had to get people in the house quickly.
Yes.
And not let the air out.
That is exactly right.
So,
and then, wait a minute, once they go in there with the air conditioning, we got television.
Yeah.
So the conversation with people ended. When you walked in, you know, you were shushed. You know, shh, wait a minute, I want to hear the TV. And so you came in somewhere cooler. You came in to something that you had a mono focus on. And that then took up hours until you got tired and went to bed. And so that whole idea of conversing and connecting, and I think understanding. I think people judge other people too much on very little information. But back in the day, you had a lot of information. You were around those people. You interacted with those people. And you got a vibe out of a lot of information. You would go through a lot of information about that person to come up with a judgment. But today, we have very little judgment, and we take that very little and make a huge leap of judgment about people and whether we feel connected or on their side or on their team or whatever. And I think that we're not better for that. It's important for us to get back to where we really know other people and know ourselves. That's the other side. When you were sitting on the porch, interacting with people helped you understand yourself. Not only understand other people, but how do I deal with other people?
Or just sitting on the porch by yourself. How many people can sit in silence anymore?
Ooh.
Silence is hard for people today.
I heard a thing the other day that I thought was very fascinating about it was I think a show called Survival, where they put people out in the middle of nowhere.
Survivor, yeah.
And the great thing was that the woman said, I feel I'll do good here because I have the ability to take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have the ability to self-soothe. Boy, Rick, that's powerful. That is so powerful. To self-soothe. And being on the porch by yourself helped you learn that talent. That was not something you're born with. It's something that you have to develop, is to self-soothe. And that's what she said. And I thought, wow, that is a powerful statement. And the first guy that left, of all the people left out, was, I just couldn't turn my brain off, he said. Mm-hmm. I kept worrying and thinking about everything at home and what I'd left at home. And I physically, I could handle it, but mentally I could not. And so you begin to see a huge survival tactic is the ability to self-soothe.
And it also proves that the mental challenge many times is harder than the physical challenge.
Without a doubt. And I think that goes for marriages. I think that goes for work. I think that goes for friendships. It never, in any of the areas I just mentioned, turns out the way you thought it was. Mm-hmm. When we first got together, when we first got married, when I first joined the company. Well, and I say later on, is it still the same? And across the board, people say, oh, no, it's not the same. We've had to make a lot of adjustments. And for those people who can't make the adjustments, then they're unemployed, they're out of a marriage, they don't have any friends, because when you only look for excellence or perfection, even more so, then things can't last under that spotlight. They just won't work.
Well, back in the 60s when Batman was on, there was a character called the Riddler. And he would always go and riddle me this. And Roger, I'm going to ask you to riddle me this.
Okay.
We now, with the technology we have, it says I have 400 and some friends. You have over 1,000 friends. How have we been able to create a technology and yet now be so disconnected from other people?
Okay, I'll answer that, Riddle, in the fact of screening. Mm-hmm. It's very seldom when people get with technology and get on technology that they don't do an incredible amount of self-screening. Probably the best example of that, Rick, is dating sites. Mm-hmm. How many people have you heard who say, oh, the person I saw on the dating site was the person I met when I made the connection? You never hear that. Wait a minute. We put forth our best. Mm-hmm. The youngest picture, the thinnest picture, the best hairdo, the best color, the best whatever. And we put out all our best qualities. If we've achieved this, we've achieved that. But if we have anything on an arrest record or any kind of massive debt, I don't hear people putting that on a dating site. They leave that stuff out. And then you meet them, and the one thing I hear is, goodness gracious, you must be 20 pounds heavier and 20 years older than what you said. And, oh man, this is a phrase, Rick, you led me to believe this and such. Mm-hmm. I love that old statement. Well, everything on the internet is truth. And back in the day, I can remember where people thought, if I saw it on the internet, that was true. But nowadays, people, I don't know. But people are getting savvier at screening their appearance on the internet as a way of connecting and hooking with people, saying, well, then I have this many friends. Well, wait a minute. A friend in person is a lot different than a friend on computer.
So the question is, are we really here, or are we just part of the internet conspiracy?
Well, I think probably, Rick, I think probably both. but probably both. I think that we realize that there's a glitch, that we had lost something, and we understand that there are a number of people who can't come to our porch in person, but they can late at night get on the computer, and hopefully we create the vibe of time on the porch, time when you can come in, sit down, and express what's going on with you.
As we're talking about how it used to be, one of the things I really feel sorry for the generation that has come up after the introduction of computers and cell phones and smartphones is not to realize what it's like to leave the office on a Friday afternoon and not worry about if anyone's going to be able to get in touch with you. In fact, the expectation was if I didn't get them on a Friday afternoon, then I won't talk to them till Monday.
Right. I think I have a bridge to that, Rick. My father was an editor of a paper growing up. So there was no such thing as 5 days a week. It was 7 days a week. There was phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. Come see this, come see that for the paper. And so I think my ability to get into the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week plan made sense to me because on some level, that's how I was living. But I think if I'd have grown up with a banker or with a shop owner who had, 9 to 5, shut the door, and I'll see you tomorrow, I think moving into the technology and how people operate would have been a lot harder for me.
So, is work-life balance unachievable?
Well, I think you have to not buy into the hype.
And what's the hype?
And the hype is if you work, you'll achieve. And the more you work, the more money you're going to put in the bank. And the more you work, the better you're going to be at budgeting. And the more you work, the more people are going to like you. And I think that has been the carrot that has moved the donkey of work. And I think that people invest so much into work, and they don't realize, I just keep on giving. No, something has to give. If you're giving to work, well, you're taking from home life and from your relationships with other people, your time with your spouse if you have one, or your time with your friends, or your time with your children. Those all suffer. And I think people are beginning to see that it's so important to have a balance, that if I look to achieve at work, I have to achieve at home. It takes both areas to make a successful life. It takes a good balance of work, but as you kind of mentioned, there has to be a shut-off. I love where people have talked about when they come to eat, no cell phones. That they really structure their technology. It's not that they do away with it and say we're not going to have any at all, but they have, this is the time we're going to have it. This is the way we're going to have it. And I think that makes more sense.
When people hear about internet addiction, probably the first thing they come to is thinking of pornography, but there actually now are treatments, people being treated for internet addiction and Facebook addiction.
Oh, without a doubt. Because in some areas, the computer can be comforting. Late, cold night, here I am all shut in, I'm isolated, and so I'm feeling alone and vulnerable, and all of a sudden I switch on that computer. Now I have a conversation. Now I connect with people. now I gain information. And also, what's kind of dangerous in that, Rick, is that's kind of an undercurrent way work creeps into a lot of people's personal life. Is, I'm not really at work, but in long before, if you're sitting on that computer, you're not doing things that are connected to work, that get your mind connected to work. And the one thing I want people to understand is when your mind is connected to work, you're not there. Bodily you might be there, but mentally you're gone. You're sitting at work.
But I would go as far as saying that even when your mind is connected to anything on the smartphone or computer, you're not there.
Oh, amen.
You can have two people sitting on a couch all night on the computer or the smartphone, and there be no communication or interaction between the two. Physically, they're there. But,
right. And we were at a Christmas pageant last night, and it was amazing how many people pulling their phones up, taking pictures. And they were so focused on taking a picture that they weren't focused on the program. And I think I saw a comment on the internet the other day that I really love that said, we went someplace and I didn't take one picture. I'm like, wow, they went someplace and didn't take a picture.
Hold on, man. Let me turn this down while as I look at the comments. Okay, how's time valued? Kim Hamilton wants to know how's time valued. And he says there is a phone neck. Actually, Kim, that's a good point. There is actually a phone neck affliction today.
Sure. Anything good overdone turns to bad. If you can take anything that's good, if eating broccoli is good for you, but you eat a pan of broccoli a day, you got problems. And there's a lot of people that are pan eating broccoli, so to speak, with their phones or whatever. And I think there's where you have to look at. And back to that idea of time,
Mm-hmm.
I think just like money, I think time needs to be budgeted. I think when I see people that I feel are coping well, handling things well, they are budgeted. They're budgeted. They're budgeted with their money. They're budgeted with their time. They know this is the time we do things. This is what we spend money on. And they seem to feel more in control and happier when they're doing that. And they get a lot more done. But when people kind of, if it comes up, I'll take care of it. And what they're actually doing is doing the whack-a-monkey.
Whack-a-mole.
Whack-a-mole. Bam, 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 bam. That's their life. And I've just been fascinated how many people who were not whack-a-mole in their early years, as they've progressively gotten older to quote-unquote survive, that's what they're doing. They're robbing Peter to pay Paul. They're hitting there. They're just frantic trying to get it done. And they never have enough money. They never have enough time. They're running from here to there. And they're always in a frantic state. And so as they get older, they start having physical problems. They start having issues with their body because they've worn their body out running from pillar to post.
Right, like Kim says, even to the point where we're now spending so much time looking down at the phone, there's actually doing damage to the neck and that affliction there. And he made another good point. Is he says our heart is where our treasures are, which of course the scriptures talk about the phone, the computer, family, and God. And where do we put those? Now, technology, I don't think either one of us are going to lambast or say technology is bad. It's like anything else. Is it used in the appropriate way? And there are times, for instance, Facebook is a great tool. I love seeing the pictures of my friends and my family.
Yeah, man, it keeps me current.
But we're going back. So what are the solutions? And you hit on one good one. If we go back to this concept of addiction, how many people, the first thing they pick up now is their smartphone to see their email and their Facebook pages even before they get out of bed?
Well, the other side of that is How many people out there can keep up with their passwords? That if and their phone numbers and things like that. I know people, and at times I'm the same way. I think, what's this person's phone number? And what comes to my mind? Blank. I don't know their phone number. I don't remember their phone number, but my phone does. So I just go to their name and hit it, and I get it done.
Siri, what is Roger Rhodes' phone number? Oh my God.
Contacts named Roger Rhodes. Tell the phone number or email address.
So why do we need to remember anything?
Oh man, wait.
So what?
You just plugged into one of my best friends, Siri. We went to a family Christmas thing the other day, and out in the country, and boy was I thankful for Siri. I said to my wife, "Oh my goodness, if we didn't have directions, we would be in trouble."
Yeah.
It's helpful. It's just helpful.
I would love to give one of those foldable maps to a 16-year-old today and see if they could find directions from their house to a landmark in downtown Greenville.
Oh, that'd be it. But I'll tell you what's even better is gear shifts on the car.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when you really weren't anything if you didn't know how to shift a car and drive a gear shift car, and now people look at you like that you're asking them to drive a spaceship.
Siri, how do you drive a stick shift car?
There it is.
Yes.
It's sad. But yeah.
Here's what I found on the web for how do you drive a stick shift car.
Hey.
Yeah, there we go. And so you take it and you interact with the phone, and you think that's the same as interacting with a person. And the answer is it's not. It's not the same. Having Siri tell you how to shift a car versus a family member or a friend showing you how to shift a car or to be with you while you're shifting the car is day and night. It's different. It's about relating to people.
Crystal, what part of the work-life balance were you referring to where you said you were guilty? And Kim, while we do that, didn't we all eventually learn while growing up that slowing down made life less hurried and manageable? I think we do the theory. I think we all know the theory works, but as you said, Roger, culturally, we're not designed that way. I remember one time having the girls when they were little done at Walt Disney World, and I just taken a new job, so I was on my first year with them, and the first year they give you 1 week vacation, and then after that you got your second week vacation. I was talking to a gentleman from Germany who was, there, and he spoke fairly decent English, but we were talking about things that came up. I asked him how long he was going to be down for. And he said, we're over here for about 5 weeks. And I go, 5 weeks? And I said, that's great. And I said, how do you do that? And he said, well, kind of like me. What do you mean? I said, I could never take 5 weeks. He says, how much vacation do you get? And I go, 1 week. And he said, oh my. But Europe has a whole different concept about it. But I guess that's what they say is that why America's great? Is because we don't know how to balance life. We are working 60 hours a week and dying earlier than any other place in the world.
That's right. We're driving. We're like a horse.
Oh yeah.
We just ride it until it drops, and that's what has happened to so many people. And it's so good that we have people calling and have that concern. That it is important. We don't want to lessen the importance of balance. How balance in life makes a big difference. And if you do that, it's amazing how that works. What do you got going?
Well, Crystal was saying that there always seems to be something work-related that has to be done. Check an email on the phone while I was on vacation last week, and still came back 86 emails Monday morning.
Well, again, as we live life, we're conditioned. We are so conditioned on how to make it work, and more is better. We're told if you push it, you'll achieve. If you take the check on your emails, you'll be ahead of the the crowd. And if you get ahead of the crowd, you make more money and you get the better position. So it's about competition. They plug the work issue into competition. And what's happened is personal life has taken a back seat.
Mm-hmm.
And we suffer from that. And people don't get, if you take away from home life enough, you are just not going to compete in the workplace. It takes that, as we're talking about today, the balance. It takes a balance of, okay, there's a time to work, there's a time to be home, there's a time to be with people, and as we're talking about today, there's a time to turn stuff off.
And so let's talk about, Cloud Townsend and their book Boundaries. I think this is a challenge that a lot of people have, is how to set healthy boundaries in life where they can actually care for self, care for family, care, because we can put all components together. I remember working for a company, Dial Page, where David Garrison was the president, but he always made it very clear that our corporation, our company, was more than just for the business. We were there for the employees, we were there for the investors, and we were there for the community, and the community of family too. And I know that that mindset's not always there, but what about boundaries? How do we set boundaries where we can set the expectations that we're not going to be available 7/24?
The first thing is we've got to be knowledgeable of boundaries. I mean, Rick, think about it. How many adults do you talk with today that even have a concept of what a healthy boundary is? And this is one of my pet peeves. I'm going to say it right up front. In school, you take algebra or you take trigonometry, okay? And I just wonder, how much algebra and trigonometry are you using today? And most people are going to say, I don't use it. I've never used it since that class. Well, that bothers me. Why aren't we teaching about boundaries in high school so that people know how to set boundaries, and people are given permission to set boundaries, and people are shown how it's done? And Rick brought up a good point. Cloud and Townsend does a book on boundaries, and it's awesome. But if I was to survey the majority of people I know, and I say, "Have you read that?" They say, "No." Wow. And I think if I gave them a test on your boundaries, the number one answer would be, "Huh."
Yeah. And the number one word that we have to learn in life is no.
Ooh. Yeah.
People don't know how to say no.
Well, and again, now I'm going back to the balance. I think it's easy to say learn no, but it's the balance of yes and no. You've got to know when to say yes and when to say no, and which times in your life do you say yes and you say no. Maybe at this moment it is the best for you in your life to say yes to it. A week later, it may change and be no. Being able to be flexible is one of the things that I've noticed that people who survive well do well. I went to a seminar where the woman called it kelping. She said, in the ocean, you have this plant that grows up kelp, and even though the ocean's going, the top of it moves around, but when you go down to the roots, it's very calm and still. And she said, that's what we need to do. We need to learn how to kelp. And I think there's where we're looking at, where people know and assess. And again, now we're back to Porches. That was a helpful moment, because sometimes in sitting at a porch and just conversing like Andy and AFB did and Opie, you learned about boundaries. You listened, you watched, you saw how in the world were they getting it done. And they weren't trying to present perfection. But in this day and age, that's one of the things that people are just really big into showing out. I'm doing this perfect. We're perfect. we lived perfect. You know, if you lived in a big house in a gated community, everything would be perfect. Well, let me tell you, if you think that, you're mistaken. It does not. You know, it's not where you live outwardly, it's where you live inwardly that makes a difference and separates how things go.
And Crystal, if you're still on, what's the hardest part about the balance for you? I understand, you know, with the young kids, working a full-time job, uh, trying to keep active in what the kids are doing. Um, so where do you find the biggest struggle? And no, go ahead into a meeting. I'll finish when I get back. Okay. We'll pick that up with you later. And then Kim still asked about enabling and codependence. Please speak to those two things.
Great question. Thank you for asking that. Because, you know, what you have to look at is that we're given an expectation from when we're little that we ought to be whole, that we ought to be complete, that we ought to have our act together. And if we don't, fake it. Act as if you have it together. Well, because people do that, they grow up and they're like Swiss cheese. They have emotional holes that are not fulfilled. And so what happens is they get into relationships at work and at home and romance and different situations at church in which they, with their Swiss cheese, they're trying to fill the hole in their life. And so they begin to believe without this relationship, without this marriage, without this church, without this whatever, I'm just not going to be complete. And they don't realize when they do that and whatever they're using figures that out, it ends up using them and abusing them. And people go, wait a minute, I thought you were helping me become complete. And what you're doing is you're making things worse, not better.
Okay. So we're still back to what are some of the ideas that we have. You know, one of the things you said is I do think we have to almost start getting that habit that when we walk in the house, if we're not on call for some reason, that the phones do have to be placed somewhere until the next morning.
I'll tell you, I worked with a therapist years ago, and I loved how his brain worked. He had about a 5-mile drive from work to home. And on the trip, back roads, 2-lane, was a billboard. And he had set up a little compartment at the bottom of that billboard out in the country. And every day he'd leave work, he'd stop, and he'd take every piece of that had to do with work, every book that had to do with work, every tape that had to do with work, and he put it in this compartment. And then he'd go home. And then the next morning when he woke up, he'd drive back, he'd stop, he'd take all that stuff, and he'd put it back in the car. And he says, for my life to work, I can't bring this stuff home. It's poison. And I can't bring myself not to use it and look at it, to not feel the pressure of going for it. But when I leave it somewhere else and I know for a fact I can't use it, I have learned to let it go. And by doing that, he had gotten more peace from doing that.
And even the idea of bringing it home, then we have to put it on, either turn them off or put them on airplane mode, because we're talking about this addiction again, and how many of us have said, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put the phone over there. I'm not going to worry about it. Then you hear that first ding. Ooh. Someone's messaging you. Oh, well, I got to go check. No, I'm not going to go check it. I'm not going to, and then we drive ourselves crazy until we stand up and check it. And,
right. That's why it's so important to turn things off.
Yep.
I remember my wife looking at me and saying, we're going into something, we're going in to interact with people, turn your phone off. And I probably mentioned this last time, but I still love it, where Joyce Myers said in her presentation, anybody with a cell phone doesn't need to have it on because nobody, and she said, including me, is that important. And I think I thought that was a very great insight that people having phones, picking up phones, getting messages gives them a feeling of importance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a false feeling of importance. You're not important. Anybody go to the phone company, get a phone, get people to call them or send messages back, alerting you to something. That doesn't mean you're important. Maybe in 1843 it made you feel important, but in 2016, 2017, no, it doesn't work that way. You're fooling yourself. You're lying to yourself.
Well, I like the idea, or what you shared about the billboard and putting this work stuff there. One of the challenges I have an opportunity to teach up in Spartanburg,
Mm-hmm.
and I've noticed that the use of cell phones, even though it's not allowed, is still too tempting to these kids. And I'll sometimes have to stop class and get everyone to start putting the phones back up. But then I read where this one instructor, not Spartanburg, but at another college, how she did attendance is she made some, I guess, a little wall thing,
little rack
with the student's name on it, and they would come in and put their cell phone in that little rack, and that's how she got her attendance each day.
Right, and if you didn't put your phone in there,
even
though physically you were there, if your cell phone wasn't in the slot, you were asked. I think that's structure,
Mm-hmm.
that's evaluating and budgeting how you're doing things, and I think that is such a great technique. And the fact is, it's easier to just let it go. I was trying to think the last time I spoke anywhere and the phone didn't go off. Now, I remember when I started speaking, there wasn't phones. They didn't go off. You didn't have to deal with that challenge. You might be dealt with people coughing or babies crying or something like that, but not cell phones. But now, it doesn't make any difference what the crowd is, what it's about, how serious the subject may be, how you may be right in the middle of doing something. The phone goes. Somebody's phone goes off. And that is now sadly the norm instead of the exception. Rather than to say, hey, and I've seen people now, Rick, who go, okay, before I start, everybody go to your cell phone, turn it off. And wow, I said, now that person was thinking ahead. That person was budgeting well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't mean that does away with it, but it sure lowers the amount of when that happens, when you consciously address it. And is that going to go over well with some people? No.
But it's setting boundaries, healthy boundaries.
Yes, and that's a good thing to say, Rick, about boundaries. Is everybody isn't going to love you putting boundaries on.
But they'll respect you.
Yeah, people they won't like you. They won't like you.
But in life, we don't have to be liked, but we do need to earn healthy respect, and that's one of the ways to do it.
Yeah.
Again, using the classroom environment without stopping, respect would not be earned. If the rules were broken, they're allowed to be broken. And if anyone calls my phone, one of the boundaries I was able to set up is I make it very clear. My message says it may be 24 hours before I will return calls, but I'm not going to return them with the expectation it's going to be within 30 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes.
Right.
But I have to set the expectation that's going to be maybe within 24 hours I'll return it. But
and the thing, Rick, is that's an expectation you have to set on you.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people, I'm going to lessen my value if I say I'm not going to connect with you for 24 hours. Oh my goodness. Well, you must not be that important. But see, because I'm so important, I've got to keep it on. I got to be right on Johnny on the spot. Because I either make it or break it by my thought. And people think that way in their brain. And again, nobody's that important. That a couple of hours, a couple of moments where I am not gettable, but I get back with people, again, is setting a boundary. And that is so powerful. And also when you're looking at any relationship over the long run, not, a couple of days, but over a couple of years, boundaries are critical. Wow, setting the boundary for a relationship and saying, I just want, before we get into things, I want you to understand this way it's going to be. If you don't want that, I respect that, but you and we're not going to do well because I have to have this to operate. And if that doesn't fit you, again, we can leave without destroying each other. But what people do is, they're covered up with passion. Oh, I'm in love with that person, and whatever they say. Oh, you bet that'll work well. And then a year in, the passion has died down, and now reality's here, and that isn't how I grew up, or what I like, or what fits for me. And wow, then boy, the fights start, the pain starts, the arguments start. It's terrible. It's just terrible. People who on one day, I love you to death, and on the other, are just thinking, I just wish you'd die.
Yeah. Kim's asking a lot of good questions, and and we'll keep it on the clock too. But his last one, Kim, that's a good question. Does society in general feel entitled to instant gratification? We live in an instant society, instant oatmeal, instant grits, instant breakfast, instant news.
Rick, I think you and I would totally agree with the idea that at this time, we're probably a little too spoiled. And that's really what in old world terms, we're really talking about. We've become spoiled. We've become expectant. We've become in a place of where my way is the way. There is no other way but your way. And people hate to hear it's not about you. Whatever it is, it's not about you. What? And their answer? Everything's about me. And everything, if I'm important, then everything has to be my way.
Yeah. My
way or the highway.
And I will go back to Kim a minute because Kim is a therapist. He's with Alpha Omega. And Kim, I just wonder, what do you see with your people? Do they have that expectation that if they text you or call you, they're going to get an instant call back? Or have you called people back or text them back within a time limit they thought was not acceptable? And how have you handled that? Because, I do think we do not know how to be patient anymore.
Right.
Patience.
Well, that's an acquired skill, Rick. That's why we don't see it much, is because to be patient, you have to work at it. It just doesn't come over. You can't put it on the shelf and buy it. You can't go to the bookstore and get it. You can't read about it. You can't watch it on any kind of electronic device. No, you have to work with it. You have to deal with it day in and day out. And if you don't acquire it. And it works if you work it, and it doesn't if you don't. Kind of old AA kind of stuff there. But that's the way it is. That's what I've seen with patients. And people are getting less and less patient because they work at it less and less. And we want to encourage people, do the tough work. Just because you go look at the ground and say, oh, there's a ditch. Well, you can say that all day long. I want the ditch to be there right now. I can say that all day long. No, I got to get a shovel and I got to put it in the ground over and over and over again. And then I look up, oh, there's a ditch, because I invested and was patient with the process to get the job done. And that is a skill we don't work enough with our lives for anybody, kids, adults, anybody. I see the whole crowd as being impatient.
Kim said, that some of his people that, he do understand, some don't, but that again, maybe like we do sometimes is we quote unquote spoil them by not setting those boundaries and going out there. So we're talking about number one, turn it off.
Yes, amen.
Turn it off.
Amen.
Two is to, we haven't had time to talk about this, and I think maybe next session we could talk a little bit about the concept of toxic people. But how much do these type of people, or how do we identify who they are, and what do they do?
Rick, one of the things I do want to share right now with people is that the less patient you are, the less you have boundaries, the less you take care of yourself. You are a magnet to toxic people. I mean, we don't get that. We're thinking, oh, I'm living my life, I'm just doing my thing. How come that person was attracted to me? It is just fascinating how things work. It's fascinating how, people who are needy attract users. That happens every day. So you have to work on being less needy. As you are less needy, you are going to be less attractable to toxic people.
Very good. Well, I think that's where we have to stop it today. Again, we will ask that if anyone has any topics they want to talk about or have discussed, we'll be here again next Tuesday, same time, same place, 10 a.m., as we continue our discussions on the porch. We appreciate the comments that were made today. And,
awesome.
And again, we realized that, just like with Crystal having to run off to a meeting, that this is a hard time for a lot of people to get in and stay on. But yeah, we definitely would. We are going to post this one, and we definitely would ask that if you have anything you want to explore, we have a seat for you right here on our porch.
You bet, man. The seat is always available. We want to encourage you to take it. We can't force you to take it. We can't shame you to take it. Rick and I are offering you a chair on the porch to be a part of the conversation.
So who knows? Maybe Barney Fife will be with us next time.
Where's Aunt B? We'll be looking for Aunt B now the next time.
We'll see everybody on Tuesday.
It doesn't like it.